We are rolling. Cameras are rolling. Here we go. Okay. So we last we left off, we were towards the very end of Siman and Bays. We had talked about the previous if Sivav had talked about not exiting or not leaving close to dark on Erev Shabbos with a certain anything, but any kalim in your hands that are used for malacha, which would otherwise be on Shabbos not be okay using, or just in general, honestly, because the fear here is carrying in a reshus harabim, and perhaps you'll forget, and you're going to go out with. You're just going to keep carrying it, and particularly for things that you normally leave in your, on your, you're an electrician and you have that belt with all the stuff on it. So you should be, close to Shabbos. You should take that off because otherwise it's just so, you're so accustomed to wearing it that you could easily see a person walking out the door into a Rishus Harabim or let's say a Carmelis, at least maybe a Rabbanon, it's a problem, and violating one of the laws of Shabbos. We did say though that with the tefillin, that you don't have to worry about carrying late in the day, because at the end of the day, you are not going to forget that you have tefillin with you in your hand. Tefillin is something we carry, not in your hand, that you're wearing it. I think we're talking about here that you're wearing it, right? That you would be wearing it. That we're not as concerned. People have to always be mamashmesh, but tefillin, you have to have hyper awareness of tefillin, that it's on your head, and so therefore we're not worried that you'll forget that it's there and then continue to wear the tefillin and then have to take it off once Shabbos comes, once Shabbos enters in, and you're not really supposed to wear tefillin, and you'll take it off, but you're on Rosh Hashanah now, so it's a whole mess. But we're not worried about that because people are, generally speaking, careful with how they treat their tefillin. Okay, so we're up to Sif Zayin. Sif Zayin should sound very familiar if you say B'mem Adlikin on every Friday night, and you might actually make it to the end before the Chazan finishes after you say the first Mishnah, because I don't know. Does everyone say all the words? I'm just saying, whatever. If you get really to the end of B'mem Adlikin, you'll be familiar with a brisa that's quoted from the first chapter. Now that I think about it, from Yud Beis in Shabbos, Masechah Shabbos. That I'm not even reading the Shulchan Aruch. I'm just reading the brisa here. Tanya, Amar Rabbi Chanina. Rabbi Chanina says, "Chayav adon lamashresh begada be'erev Shabbos im chashecha shema yishkach liyetzeh." And it says that you should memashbesh. You should kind of like examine your clothing on Erev Shabbos as it's getting dark. Make sure that you're not carrying. You forget something and go out with that on Shabbos. Go out with that, and then it'll turn out on Shabbos you're going to be carrying. Amar Rav Yosef Hilchot Shabbat. Rav Yosef, who is an Amora, so it's not really part of the Brisa anymore. Rav Yosef said, this is a very important law for Shabbos, and I think partly why he says this is because checking your clothing avoids the easy mistakes of sometimes things in your pocket. So let's read the Shulchan Aruch and the Mishnah. He's going to give us some examples. You can think of some obvious ones probably right off the bat. Yeah, you have coins, money, whatever in your pocket, things that a pen. Right, exactly. That oftentimes, people. We've been those people, right? On Shabbos, you realize you're in the middle of shul, and you're like, darn, I have a coin in my pocket. How do I get rid of this? And not cause a scene and whatever, right? So this has definitely happened to people before, and unfortunately, probably will happen to people again. So the best way to avoid this is Zion. And by the way, notice the word here: mitzvah lamashmeish adam. A person should check their kelim, their vessels, and here probably also refers to their clothing on Erev Shabbos, close to dark. So you don't end up walking out with things in the kelim on Shabbos. So another example of this might be one of the things you should check. Some people You can't see it here. My talus bag has had some wear and tear, not the actual place where the talus is, but I have this plastic thing. I need to get a new one, honestly. And it's gotten wear and tear. Some people I notice they have like a thing where they also they stick their keys in there, they stick other things in other places, and suddenly you may be carrying things that you shouldn't be carrying. So take a look here. Mishnah Berurah writes, Big Caleb. What does it mean, Big Caleb? He really means Big Godav. This is Nun Hey in the Mishnah Berurah. He says we're talking about your clothing. Anyway, they normally use it. You have an inside pocket on your suit jacket. You have however you use it, places where you put things, you should just kind of touch and make sure that there's nothing there, or at least nothing that's problematic. Pockets that are sewed into your garment. If let's say you have I'm thinking here like a fanny pack. And that's something you normally wear in a place that you normally put things in that. So then you should be checking that. If that's something you're going to continue to wear on Shabbos, you should be checking what's in there. The Shema Yesh Bahem Eza Dabar V'Yotzienu L'Rishus Harabim. And this fanny pack is also probably doubling as a belt, because otherwise there's a question whether the fanny pack is really being worn or is it being carried. Let's assume here it's doubling as your belt. So it's holding your pants up, so it's functional as clothing. Okay. By the way, it's a great trick. You should not know of such things, but when I was in college in Ann Arbor, now there's an Eruv. At the time when I was there was a push. There should be an Eruv. Now there's an Eruv there. So this is irrelevant. But I lived for 4 years. I lived in a place where there was no Eruv on Shabbos. So how do you carry your keys? So I made a Shabbos belt. So the key was the belt buckle, and therefore the key was functional in a way that served clothing purposes. So that's a trick when you're in a difficult situation without a. There you go. Yeah. Yeah, they're like the straps. They're like they hold the two parts together. Yeah, 100%. So, anyways, so let's assume you're wearing this. And perhaps you're going to forget whatever's in there, and you're going to go into the Rishus Harabim with it. Okay. Or maybe the more likely the case, and this is the bigger problem for us, because you're allowed to carry when you have an Eruv. There's no issue whatsoever with carrying, so long as the item and article is permitted to be carried on Shabbos. But what happens if the thing that's in your fanny pack or that's in your pocket is muktzah? So you're carrying things that have no Shabbos usage. I'm going to give the easy example here, because we're going to have the muktzah is a whole topic to itself, which we will deal with at a certain point. Let's go with the easy one. Muktzah, the easiest definition of muktzah of Rav Shechter. I don't know if he quotes this from Rav Soloveitchik, I'm not sure, but the way he categorizes it is it's junk on Shabbos, dirt, sticks, rocks, things you have zero, because things that are called kalim, even like a pen is technically by the definition of the word muktzah is not muktzah. Sorry, I know I ruined your whole Jewish education from that, from infancy till now. A pen or some other thing that we don't use on Shabbos that is an item. It's not just dirt or sticks or rocks. Those are called kalim, and then it's a question: is it a kli shemalachto leis or a kli shemalachto leheter? Is it a kli that's used for permissible activities or forbidden activities? You should know a kli that's used for forbidden activities. You're allowed to move on Shabbos. You should try to avoid this ahead of time. Let's say you have a pen that was left on your dining room table and you want to have a Shabbos meal there. Everyone starts to go, they're trying to blow no, you're actually, the Gemara makes very clear. If you actually want to use the pen, I'm not even going to turn the recording off. You want to take the pen and you want to use it as a back scratcher on Shabbos, you want to use the thing, go ahead, not a problem. You need the spot, tzorech makomo, take the pen with your hand, not like a crazy idiot to go, you're going to take the thing and you're going to put it, you get to move it one time and move it out of the way. Muktzah, that's why there's a difference here. Muktzah, like dirt, like just clumps of dirt or rocks or sticks, that haven't been set aside. If you have a rock collection, very different story. Okay, so if you have your pet rocks, don't worry, you can continue to take care of them on Shabbos the way you normally do. I don't know how that is, but that's okay. But you can, but if let's say you have, that's why your kids pick up sticks on Shabbos, or your grandkids, let's say, pick up sticks on Shabbos. That's more of an issue than if they pick up the electronic toy that they don't actually push the buttons of. But because those things have no usage, they're not kalim. They're not vessels that people use. You don't use sticks that you didn't even have from beforehand. You just picked it up in the backyard, fell off the tree. So as a back scratcher, so that you can't do actually because it's not a kli. It hasn't had the Torah's kli, shame kli. It could be that you turn it into that at a certain point. You can like your pet rock, you can change it from being a rock to a pet rock. Right, and the same thing with a stick. You can change its status if you're miyached that the stick is my back scratcher, and then it will be permissible on Shabbos to use, so long as you use the stick in a permissible way. You have to be careful not to break the stick or to shave off the bark, whatever. So bottom line is here, you have to be careful when there are things in your pocket that you're not allowed to carry. Sometimes there are certain things you can carry that you might not have realized that you can carry.
What's a pet rock?
I have no idea.
It was a fad.
A pet rock is it was a fad. I was not Zocha, or maybe I was glad I wasn't Zocha to know of such a thing.
It was a big money maker for smoking. Really, it was.
Okay, good. So, Be'er Nunva, Be'er of Shabbos, Nirat V'hu Din B'Shabbos, Im Hu Rod Selotzes Chutz LaEruv. Same thing on Shabbos. You live in a place without an Eruv, or you're staying in a hotel somewhere for a Shabbos. There's no Eruv outside going outside the confines of the building. Question, there's no Eruv probably there. So then you should check before you leave that space. Check your pockets. Am I carrying anything in there? Because maybe I normally carry something and I'm permitted to do that on Shabbos, but now I'm in a place where there's no Eruv for Shabbos, so it's a little bit of a different situation. So he says here the same halacha should apply, that you should just do a quick check of all your pockets and make sure on Shabbos that you're not going there. So that you need to check right from the get-go.
My great grandfather's handkerchief tied.
Yeah.
And I used to do that.
Yeah.
I take the cheese and then put it on the stove.
Right.
Yeah. I'm afraid because it's coming loose.
Right.
So I said, I better not do that.
Yeah. Okay.
It's
Yeah.
like a big deal in this community because I got caught on this. Because when you use a stroller on Shabbos, you have those bags in the back of your stroller or the stuff on the bottom. You tend to throw stuff on there all week.
For sure.
And you really should look through it.
Yeah, correct. You may be pushing things in the stroller that they've been adding up. Right. So just Hinda was pointing out. Sorry, Steve. I need to.
Here.
It's in the office, and I forgot to set it up today. Hinda was pointing out that a lot of people throw things in their stroller. Right. If you have kids or grandkids and you're pushing a stroller on Shabbos, we're a little bit guilty of this as well. That sometimes the way you use it during the week, you just kind of stuff things in the bottom underneath the stroller, and then Shabbos comes and you don't really think about checking it and looking through what did you throw down there the whole week. Or what did your kids throw down there the whole week? I've found piles of rocks sometimes, actually. My daughter happens to enjoy collecting interesting shaped rocks, which are just rocks, by the way. And right. So the rock collection is a big deal. It's a big problem, actually. Again, unless you set aside the rocks ahead of time, which maybe I guess if you have a rock collection, you are kind of doing. Then it otherwise could be an issue on Shabbos to have that in your stroller and at the bottom. Okay, what we'll do is we'll pause. Oh, sorry, I'm not going to pause here. We're going to keep going. We finished Reish Nun Beis, so Asher Kochachem. And now we come to a siman that on the surface, you're like, oh, this is a siman only has 5 seifim. Oh, it shouldn't be so long. But if you keep turning the pages of Reish Nun Gimel, you'll keep going, and you're going to keep going, and you're really going to keep going for quite some time. This is because this siman is, in many ways, this is a siman that most often as a rabbi, I'm saying in terms of Shabbos questions that I get or that other rabbis get, this is probably the siman that is most often needs to be referenced when people ask questions related to food, I should say. Food and Shabbos. This is the one. It's not the only one, by the way. You'll see there's a few simanim that we're going to learn in a row. Then the malacha of bishul is attacked more in detail in Shin Yud Ches much later on. But the reason that this is here is because this refers to things, again, the Shulchan Aruch is in sort of in order from Erev Shabbos into Shabbos. So we're still on Erev Shabbos and we're just checking our pockets right now. So now we're making sure that the things related to the food that we are preparing is set up properly Erev Shabbos into Shabbos. And so that's why this topic is here. This is, again, a very important topic. For better or for worse, you're going to learn things that maybe you didn't know before, and you'll have to deal with that. It's not my problem. But, it's a better, I think, my personal opinion, of course, is that it's good, better to know. I think you will see also, though, that there's a very clear way of understanding how we heat up food Erev Shabbos into Shabbos and on Shabbos itself. So we're going to deal also with that topic. Once we're on the topic of what we call Shehiyah, we'll explain that one in a second. We'll also talk about Chazara. So the Mishnah Berurah begins with an introduction. That's when you know it's a big topic here. Yes, they introduce it to us. So Reish Nun Gimel, before the remarks of the Mishnah Berurah even begin, says, Hinei b'bnei she'asiman hazeh rabu forotav. And I'm not even sure what the word forotav means. I don't know. Anyone have again, the word pe'er means sort of glorious or splendor, but I don't know that there's what it means here. I mean, Leslie's saying that this siman is filled with, wondrous halachot, sort of. I don't know if that's what he's trying to say here. I'm not sure what else. Trying to look up this word in modern Hebrew and, more Aramaic. I couldn't find anything that other definitions here. So all he's trying to say, it's a very important siman that I can get. And in order for the person who's reading not to make mistakes, right? They get all confused. Amarti lahatik mi sefer machatzis shekel psicha ktana eleha mi ikore hadinim shala kedei sheyarutz hakorebo. So I'm going to copy the words of the machatzis shekel, was Achron, his introduction, small introduction that he has about some of these laws. In order, this is also interesting, so that I guess in order that the person who's reading through it can sort of run through this halacha, can really make their way through these laws, you need to have this little introduction. There is shehiyah and there's chazar. Now he's going to explain what those are. Shehiyah, mikre, shenosein tavshil me'erev Shabbos al gabe kira. Lo derech mana, umanicha omed al gabe kira, uv'Shabbos notel me'akira. What is shehiyah? Shehiyah is called when you place a food item, a tavshil, a cooked food item, or it's already cooked. We're not talking. Well, that's a whole question we're going to get into. You're placing a food item on Erev Shabbos on top of the kira. A kira was the oven in the days of the Talmud. And many make the claim, and at least in the time of the Mishnah of the Shulchan Aruch and Ramah, that the tanurim shalanu kira, their tanurim are like the kira of the Talmudic period. So we're talking about practically an oven here. But you have to also remember that the oven of the kira in the times of the Talmud is not necessarily what you and I think of when we think of our oven. Particularly because we think of an oven. I don't know of anybody who has an oven that opens from the top and you put it down in. Our ovens open from the side. That is not an insignificant thing to remember as we continue our discussion throughout this siman. Ovens in the akira sounds like the way it's described sounds like something you put down in. We have our ovens, and already in the time of the Rishonim, the Shulchan Aruch, certainly I was just reading yesterday, I was preparing. The Bach talks about our ovens open from the side, right? Which is how we, or they open it this way, or I don't know how the door function, but just know that that's a little bit of a difference, and it'll play a role. And you're putting it on top of the kira, on top of the oven, not down in it. Lo derech hatmana, not in a way where you're in covering it on all sides. Like hatmana means to hide something literally. Hatmana on Shabbos is going to be a big problem, which we'll get to in a few simanim. Anytime something is over a heat source and it's completely covered, and then on that heat source, it's a problem. Okay, so we'll talk about. Ever seen a Shabbos blanket before? These Shabbos cooking blanket. Steve is nodding his head yes.
What is it?
So it's essentially it's like a like a large.
Put it over the soup.
Yeah, you put it over the soup. So there's a real question. So I remember our leader when we were learning the simon, he not the simon, they made a few from now when it gets to Hadmana, he said he called it the Machal Shabbos blanket because you have to be very careful how you use it. It's not so careful. If you actually engulf like usually, as Steve said, people use it often for their soup, right? To keep it nice and hot. So you cover this over, it's on the hot plate and the soup is on. If it's completely covered on all sides, we have to carefully realize. So if it's open, it has some openings, you'll see that that's going to be okay. So we're not talking about hot money yet. So that's why he's saying, don't worry, it's not hot mana here. All right, just you put it on top of the oven. There's a heat source underneath, but not, it's not. This thing is not encased all around to get it even hotter. Okay, we'll get to hot mana when we get there. Yeah.
Are you saying there's a problem with a regular oven or a warming drawer?
In what sense? Depends. The regular oven.
Yeah.
With a regular oven on Shabbos,
right,
there may be issues. Yes, we're gonna talk about sort of if you're trying to reheat food for Shabbos day in the regular oven, that's gonna be a challenge. There's one scenario where you can have food in there if it was from before Shabbos, but the way we'll talk about this. On Friday night. So if you in short, if you shut off the oven beforehand and it stays in the heat there, that's going to be fine. So, but we'll discuss how you handle the reheating of food on Shabbos. But it looks like I just threw you off right now.
No, yeah. And I'm also thinking of a warming drawer when you
The warming drawer is fine. The warming drawer, there's a machlokas about this to this day between the poskim. My opinion, my Rebbe's opinion, I actually never asked Rabbi Morgenstern this question. I don't actually know, so I should be careful not to speak for Rabbi Morgenstern. What I learned, I'll say this way: what I learned is a warming drawer is fine, and the reason this is important also, this is a good introduction. If something is mechse kemevashel, if something gives the appearance of cooking, even though it's already cooked, it's a problem to reheat food that way on Shabbos. So that's why putting food into an oven that's already cooked. So you're not talking about an Issa del Raisa here, and the oven is on. So I didn't create a Havara situation, though you can start to hem and haw. Is the opening of the oven a kind of way that it's going to trigger the temperature is going to go down, and it triggers the temperature to go up as a result of then reclosing it after the temperature has gone down. Let's leave the Havara question aside. Since people cook in an oven, it's a problem. People do not cook in a warming drawer. It's not something we do. We don't. You even if you could, that's so important here. Even if you could cook in a warming drawer, people don't cook in a warming drawer. I have a hot plate, not hot plate. I'm very careful about the terms I use here. A warming tray. My warming tray can get very hot, maybe too hot. You have to be careful with these things. You could probably do some minimal amounts of cooking on it, but nobody cooks like that. So nobody would ever think that this is, no one will look at this and go, this is cooking. You could cook on a blech that's on top of the stovetop, right? Which one of those metal blechs that cover the flame. That's essentially just the stovetop with a covering now on it. That's all. So we'll talk about a blech. A blech is going to be a little bit different. You can reheat the food on a blech under certain conditions. But putting something toch into an oven is going to be really very problematic. There'll be one case. You'll remind me when we get to this discussion about the chulam that stays in the oven all night long from before Shabbos to Shabbos day. That's one scenario where you could probably do this, but otherwise the warming drawer, yes. The warming drawer is absolutely going to be fine. I'm giving you, sorry to give away the ending here. The warming drawer is fine.
It's interesting. What is it warm?
It's a relatively newer thing on ovens. I feel like in the last couple decades that maybe even not a couple decades, but at the bottom of a lot of people's ovens, they have a compartment there that
It's like a drawer.
it's the
You
food is
pull
already
it-
cooked and you just leave it in there to keep the food warm.
Right.
Warming drawer. That's literally it's like a drawer that
You
warms.
you don't cook
Yeah.
in it.
Yeah.
It can't
It's
go
not cooking.
above
It's not
a certain
cooking.
It's not
temperature.
like the
It's
broiler or something.
it's not a
No.
broiler. No. The opposite. It's like
Oh,
literally
It's in,
I'm
it's in the
saying-
spot where the broilers
I'm
used to be.
Right.
That's right.
using that as an
right.
example. It looked like broilers.
In the good old days,
Yeah.
the broiler was at the bottom, right? Yeah, no, it's not exact same spot, but they replaced it with something smarter. Okay, now let's go back here. So shehia, I put it on the kira, umanicha omer al gabe, and it's sitting there on the kira as Shabbos enters. Ubishabbos no tel me'akira, and on Shabbos, Friday night when I'm having my meal, I take it off the kira, off the oven. It's not in the oven, though. We'll talk about being in the oven may also be fine on Friday nights. Okay, that is shehia. Shehia, easy definition. We're talking about how to heat food up from Erev Shabbos going into Shabbos. Remember, mid'oraisa, there is no prohibition that you can violate if you do the action before Shabbos and something happens on Shabbos. But mid'Rabbanan, the rabbis came in here and they made a gzeira, more than one, that relates to food prepared from Erev Shabbos heading into Shabbos. The other topic we're going to talk about here, bechazara, which literally means to return something. You're returning food to the fire, right? So now we're thinking more like Shabbos morning, and you're getting ready for lunch. You put foods, you try to heat food up. What is this? Kishahanicha me'erev Shabbos. So there are two ways actually to define this. You had it there. You placed it on the kira on the top of this oven, erev Shabbos. Uve Shabbos not lo mehakira, and on Shabbos you take it from the kira. And then you're like, okay, you take it off, and then you put it back on the kira. So at some point you took it off Shabbos, right? And you were giving out food to your kids who couldn't be patient for lunch, right? And then you take it, you put it back on. So that's chazar. I'm returning it back to the fire.
How about in old times, I'm just asking, I remember something. The old times when mom or grandma would make the soup and take the stuff off.
Yeah, the top of it.
Is
Yeah.
that in the same category? You
No.
know what I'm talking, you know what I'm
No.
talking- you know what I'm
Yeah,
talking-
I know what you're talking about. No. The answer is no. So Michael was asking about in terms of a soup. When we'll see when we talk about liquids. Liquids are more complicated, and particularly a soup is more complicated. Once you start messing around with it on Shabbos, there are ways that you can have soup on Shabbos day. We do it in my house sometimes. But you have to, again, this is why you have to study these laws. It's very, it's a little bit complex. But so you're talking about like you're shaving off that almost like that looks like a net on top of the soup. Yeah. So yes, you can take it off, but once you're serving it. If it's on the fire to stir things on the fire, we talked about actually a little bit a few simanim ago, or maybe at the beginning of the Rishon Beis, is a problem. So we will touch on all these things. I don't want to just put some definition on the table here. So that's chazar according to one approach. Zehu ikar din chazar lekuli alma. That's what chazara. Everyone calls that chazara. Well, yesh od inyan chazar. There's another kind of chazar. Shenot lo me'erev Shabbos samach l'chashecha. This is what we do. You take the food off the fire erev Shabbos because you finished cooking it. Uma chazira. And on Shabbos day, the next day, you put it on you put it over some sort of heat source. Kamavor b'sif beis. The Rambam will talk about it in Sif Beis. Okay, that's of course very relevant in our day. I'm not so sure how relevant that was always in the days of yore, because they didn't have refrigerators the way we have the ability to store food. And this is why chamin, cholent, was a very popular food because it was one of the ways that you could guarantee yourself some hot food on Shabbos day. That you don't have to store it overnight. It's cooking overnight. So, and we'll talk about that whole thing. How is the cholent cooking on Shabbos? Isn't that a violation of this? We'll talk about all these things. Upligi Chananya b'Rabbanan. Here's an important thing to know from the Gemara. In the beginning of Perek Kira, the third chapter in Shabbos, there's a machlokas between Chananya and the Rabbanan. A very important machlokas. And there's a machlokas about how to paskin this question: do we follow Chananya or do we follow the Rabbanan? The Chananya Svirale, he reads the Gemara and the Mishnah in a particular way that leads us to the following conclusion: Im hatavshil kvar nishba shel k'machal ben drosai. If the food item is cooked to the level of what we call machal ben drosai. Anyone have any familiar with this? Machal ben drosai. Hopefully, okay.
About a third cook, because this guy was the thief,
robber, bandit,
on the run.
Right. His name Ben Drosai. He became so famous that the Gemara used him forever as the example. As a human being, I don't even know if he was Jewish, by the way. I'm not sure. He was like, it's like the Al Capone of the day. He was like a known criminal. Everybody knew. Oh, Ben Drosai. He was a guy on the run. So when you're a guy on the run, you think you have time to sit around in communal ovens when you're cooking something? Until they're like, wait, the guy on the wanted sign on the poster looks like this guy. So you don't have enough time to actually stay anywhere, for any lengthy period of time. So when you go and you take foods to the communal ovens to cook, how do you do it? Very quickly. You cook it minimally, so it's just minimally edible, and then you take it out and you run because somebody's going to realize it's you. So Ben Drosai was always on the run, and so he ate food. This was the legend about him. He ate food just like barely cooked, minimally cooked, not fully cooked, minimally cooked, so that he didn't, eat raw foods. So how do you define? So it's machlokas. If is it chatzi bishul, kishlish bishul, half cooked, third cooked? And I remember when I was at Smicha, I don't know if I pointed this out a lot. I said, what's the difference? Half cooked, a third cooked. How do you start to know when something is a third cooked or a half cooked? So that's a question. So Hananya says, if a tafshil is cooked to the point where Ben Drusai would eat it, muter lahashhosa agabe kira, then you can leave it from Erev Shabbos into Shabbos on top of the kira. Afilu eina grufa min hagechalim ve'eina ketuma. Even if the coals have not been stoked, you haven't. Grufa means to remove the coals. So there's still heat there, but the coals have been removed. And ketuma means mechusa hagechalim be'efer. You're covering the coals with ashes in a way that makes it hard to then rekindle the flame, and therefore you'll circumvent the second problem here. It's not just that it looks like cooking. There's also a fear. The rabbis were worried that you'll stoke the coals, right? So that the food will be in the oven, and you'll be like, just the way you're naturally. Okay, let me just move it around. I want to make the food cook a little faster, or whatever. Oh, oops! I just fidgeted with the oven essentially. Today, it would be like, oops, I just adjusted the flame. There's a flame like right on top of your oven, and I just play with oops, and it's Shabbos, and naturally that's how we look at food. We're like, oh, maybe he's a little more heat, and you'll turn it up a little bit. So this circumvents that problem, because once it's already partially cooked, we're not worried you're going to start fidgeting with it, because I say in an hour until you eat, half an hour until you eat Shabbos food, your Shabbos dinner, you're not going to fidget with it. It's already cooked minimally, etc., etc. I'm going to pause here just because of the time. It's 8:15 already. So we'll see. We'll review Hananiah's opinion, and we're going to have to go over the Rabbanan's opinion, and we're going to see that the Rambam and the Rif fall out one way on this halacha about how you paskin in terms of the Gemara and how you read the Gemara. Really, it's a big problem how you read the Gemara. There are two ways you can read it, and Rashi and Tosfos are going to fall out on another side. And this is going to lead to a very lengthy Sif Aleph, because the Shulchan Aruch is going to quote both opinions in length, in detail. The Ramah is going to write 4 words about which opinion the Ashkenazim follow. And by the way, to this day, I actually never figured out what the Sfaradim do. I don't actually know what their minhag is. Not surprisingly, we're going to follow Rashi and Tosfos, the Ashkenazim. But this is really going to be very in-depth. It's going to be a mental workout for the next probably 3-4 months that we work on this synonym. So I'm predicting this is going to be a very late. There's like 28 pages of Mishnah Berurah here. Okay, have a wonderful day.